I did notice that some of you were doing mock interviews this week. I'm not going to say you can't do it, but technically they were due for next week. Um, so I just don't know if there's was some confusion with that. You're supposed to be doing your resume reviews this week, but I do know some career services like to do them together, so that's fine too. I just didn't want you guys to feel like you had to do it this week. I don't want to make sure everyone's not confused by that. All right. All right. So we're going to talk about preparing for your interview. Even though this is like preparing for a real interview, but I also want you to think about it in terms of preparing for your mock interview because, essentially they are supporting you and helping you to get a job, and they are kind of, you know, looking at you and trying to see if you are a good fit for certain opportunities that may come their way. So I would definitely treat this practice interview, this mock interview, under in two ways. One, like a real interview, as well as an academic opportunity to get feedback. But be mindful that, they are connected to employers and they will be referencing you out. So you want to treat it, with the same reverence that you would give a real interview. I do want to say that, but we'll talk more about that tomorrow. But today we're going to talk just about the interview process in general. We're in chapter 10, so please make sure you're reading chapter 10. Um, We'll spend a lot of time today just talking a little bit about the different types of interviews and some basic interviews, things like where to go, different virtual, non-virtual stuff like that. But tomorrow we'll dig into actual interview questions, which I know is what most people need support with. Like, how do I answer these questions? What are they about? Why do they ask these types of questions versus those types of questions? What do they really want to know? And so we'll really dig into that on tomorrow. But for today, let's just talk a little bit about the interview process. At some point, we will all be offered an opportunity to interview. Why do they want to see you? They've seen your resume, if they believe it. Some of them even do a little bit of research, you know, from the information that they've seen on your resume. So why do they want to physically see you in person? Well, they want to, number one, get a chance to talk to you so you can elaborate on those different job opportunities. Yes, they want to see you in person. Yes, they want to make sure you're a real person, all of that. But they really want to do is get a sense of, would you be a good fit? A lot of times if a person says that they have experience, you would be surprised that there's a lot of different types of experience, right? So the type of experience that they're looking for may not be the type of experience that you had, and vice versa. So they want to be able to communicate with you to make sure that you guys are both on the same page. Now, when it comes to the interview process, the first step you'll typically get is sorry guys, someone's texting me saying they're having trouble getting in. Um, Let me just tell her a minute. Maybe I can't go to live. I'm not even sure what that means. Okay. So anyway, you'll get an invitation to interview. Typically it will be via email or via phone. I've made the mistake if there's anybody that doesn't check their voicemails that much or make sure, that those voicemail boxes are clean and clear, you know, if someone calls you, if you're so used to your friends and family calling you that you don't really, answer the phone formally, guys, like don't, if you're interviewing and you've given people your phone number, make sure you're picking up calls you don't recognize, or if you let it go to voicemail, make sure you're checking it. Like, a lot of companies will just go to the next person. They're not going to go out of their way in most cases to try to reach out to you. Make sure you're answering the phone politely. You don't know who's on the other end. Make sure you're checking your spam calls, got your spam folders, to make sure that if they did send you an email, that um you are responding to it. Give me 1 second, guys. This student is having some issues. Let me just let her know. Give me 1 second. I'm so sorry. Give me 1 second, guys. I'll be back. Sorry, guys. All right. So sorry about that. Quick, quick note, because this may be for, I mean, obviously you guys are in class, but it's always good to check your technology before class, even if you know that this link stays open 24/7, right? So you can always log into class to make sure it works, even when there is no class. Like, you don't have to wait to class to make sure you can log into the Teams, right? You'll just log in and you'll be the only one here. There's people that come here and they're here before I even get here. But make sure you're checking your technology before class starts, right? All right, so you don't get stuck. All right, so um, the other thing that you want to be mindful of is that when you do get an invitation to interview, typically you're going to be interviewed in one of three ways. The first way, most of us will have a screening interview. That'd be one way, and that will be the first step. And then you'll probably have, hopefully, you don't have all three, either a structured interview and an unstructured interview. So when you get that, let's say it's an email saying, hey, we really would love to move forward and interview with you, you'll always know if it is the first step, which is a screening interview, because that screening interview will only be for like 15 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. That's because it is the HR department that wants to verify that what is on your resume is what exactly you said, that they understand it and that you also understand the job description. So they just want to double check. I guess back in the day, and they've started doing this fairly recently. And I think it's because people get to the interviews and they're like, oh, I didn't know that, or oh no, not this is exactly what I do, and it's not what they want. So now HR makes sure that, just because you have it on your resume, that doesn't mean it's exactly what they're saying. So a lot of times they want to chat with you very briefly just to make sure you understand it. Like they don't want to be honest, they don't want to be embarrassed when they send your resume to the hiring manager, because remember, most HR departments, not all of them, but most of them are just screeners. They're putting the posting out, they're collecting the resumes, and then they're passing it on to the supervisor. Now, it doesn't happen like that for all companies, because some HR personnel are very involved in the process. They actually do the first pass. But for most HR, they're just screeners. So, sometimes we get bummed out when we think, oh, we have an interview, and then we realize it's just a screening interview. The HR person, like, they don't really make the decisions. But, it is good that they at least pass your resume on. So it's still important to take that screening process serious. But just know that typically the screening interview will be maybe 15, 20 minutes. You'll also know it's a screening interview if they want to just talk to you over the phone, because most hiring managers will want to lay eyes on you. They'll want to see you, right? So if it's a screening interview, especially in the trades, right, it's probably going to be 15 minutes over the phone, right? Now, as you're meeting with these individuals, whether it's the HR person or the hiring manager, you're trying to get as much information as possible. One of the simple things, and I'll talk through both today and tomorrow, I'll highlight, hey, and this is something else to ask the screener, and this is something else to ask the screener. But one thing you want to try to do is get a sense of who it is that you are going to interview with. Remember, interviews are a two-way street. You're trying to see if this is going to be a ideal place for you to work. You're trying to become a master electrician, for example. Maybe you're trying to become a veterinarian one day. Maybe you're trying to specialize, in some type of HVAC. And you picked this company because they have a really good training program, or because they do tuition assistance if you want to go back to school, or because they say that they do a lot of work in government, or maybe they have more than one campus, like whatever your reason is for having chosen this company. So when you go there, you're looking for those clues as well, right? It's not just they're there to see you, you're also there to see them, to see, okay, is this place really what they say that they are? Because companies lie to, companies over embellish, and you get there and it's like, oh no, did we say that? No, we used to have a training program, we used to have tuition reimbursement, now we don't do that anymore, right? So you want to make sure these people are not giving you, a bunch of hogwash as well. So you want to try to get as much information as possible. So in this screening interview, especially if the screener is a bit long-winded and he or she talks a lot, and, try to listen to see what they're saying about the position. They definitely want to give you the person's name that you're going to interview with, because you're going to go and you're going to Google search that person. I say go to LinkedIn. If they say, okay, I really like what you're saying and we want to move you forward to interviewing, you're going to be meeting with Derek Johnson. He's over the division that you'll be working under. Make sure you take notes of that. It's also good to ask them, oh, will I only be meeting with Derek, or will I be meeting with anybody else? Oh, you know what? Derek likes to meet a lot with Sarah. Sarah is going to be the project lead. She works mainly with the contract. Okay, so Sarah, what's her last name? Sarah, Taylor. Okay, so now I know I'm meeting with Derek Johnson and Sarah Taylor, because I'm going to go do research on both of them. I'm going to go to LinkedIn and I'm going to Google these people. So thank you very much. That's one thing you definitely want to get. If the screener says, oh, I'm going to set up an appointment for you, and then normally they'll send you back, where you're going to meet, make sure you pay attention to who's copied on those emails, right? That's another way to try to see, okay, if Derek Johnson or Sarah, Taylor, their names are on those CCs. Later on, I'm going to tell you what to do with that information. But one of the first things you're going to do is go do your research on these people. Listen, you don't want to walk into a situation blind. They're going to do their research on you. You better believe they're going to go to LinkedIn and wherever else to try to get as much information about you as possible too. So when we move past this screening interview, typically you'll go to the next step, which is a structured interview. Now, 50% of you guys, or maybe more, will have an unstructured interview, but most of those unstructured interviews, and we call those working interviews, by the way, start out in a structured environment. A structured interview is also known as a formal interview, and this is where, your typical meeting around the conference room with one or more persons, also known as a directive interview. So on your midterm guides, in this open book, by the way, um, if the question asks you, a structured interview is also known as what? It's also known as a directive interview. It may throw out formal interview, so just I don't mark off wrong if you put either one, but just be mindful of that. This directive interview, structured interview, formal interview is where they're going to ask you a series of questions, and we'll talk about those questions tomorrow. And they use these questions to compare you to other folk, right? So typically they will ask the same set of questions to everybody, because they're trying to compare apples to apples. Um, uh, what else I want to say about this? So that's the main thing. So just know that in the structured interview, make sure you have your resumes on hand. Just bring a few, especially if you don't know if it's only going to be one person or not. Bring a few, but this is where you will spend some time doing the whole Q&A, and we'll dig into those Q&As tomorrow. But most of you will have a structured interview. So outside of that, an unstructured interview rather. Once you get past that, those few Q&As, maybe you'll spend the first 30 minutes doing that. Then they may move into a working interview. Some of you may just start with a working interview. This is less formal. So your instructors on campus have probably told you, yes, for sure, you'll be doing these unstructured interviews, these working interviews. They told you how to dress. If you're in the vet or medical program, you may have to wear scrubs, for example, to the interview. You'll know that. That's something else that you can ask the HR person or whoever's calling you to set up the appointment, or career services. Typically, if they're sending you out, they're going to tell you, hey, you're supposed to wear scrubs. You're supposed to wear, if you're a welder or, any type of, if you're going to be like on a construction site or whatever, they'll say, hey, make sure you wear steel toe boots, wear some pants that you don't mind getting dirty. They will ask you to do demonstrations. We call these unstructured interviews, right? But just know that they sometimes do start out, as structured. So still make sure that you, and, we'll talk about more of this tomorrow, but make sure you at least bring your copies of your resumes, a notepad, and a pen. Just because it's an unstructured interview, it does not mean that you're not going to sit down and talk, right? obviously you want to wear comfortable shoes, guys. They a lot of times in these interviews, they may, especially if they're big, they may want to walk you around the site and stuff like that. So if you just got those steel-toed shoes, you better make sure you break them in, because you just never know, how long these things can go. So to that point, I'll say, if you have a job, got to pick up kids, or anything like that, make sure you ask the screener, how long is the interview? Can I expect to be there for 2 hours? Can I expect to be there for 1 hour? You know, and they're supposed to, make sure you pay attention to where it's located. Again, if you can get that out of the screener, ask. Some screeners are very like in and out. Like they want to be like, okay, I just wanted to double check that you fit the bill. I'll send you all this information. So you don't want to, like, get on their nerves by asking too many questions. Like, fill them out, but at the same time, if they don't like make it obvious that they're going to send you some information, it's okay to ask. Or if they send you it and it's not there, you can also follow back up with them, right? Because you want to obviously know where you're going. Don't assume it's going to be at their campus. Like, you could say, oh my God, yeah, I really want to work for this company because they're only 15 minutes down the street, but they want to interview you on the project site, and that's 40 minutes away. So you definitely need to make sure that that screener is giving you that information so that you can factor it into your day. If you're going to be there for 2 hours, so now you're talking about 40 minutes out, 2 hours plus 40 minutes back. If you have a job, I always tell people you may want to consider like taking a day off, if it's going to be that type of thing, or maybe taking a half day, or even just making sure that you made provisions for, if you have to deal with kids or anything like that. So that, that's why it's important to get as much information as you can from that screener. My friends, please do not go to any company without doing your research on the company. That's a big one. That's a big one. Next to your ability to articulate your skills, the next important thing is the company feeling like you know about their company. When you do what we call the general information questions that we'll talk about, those will be the first set of questions that you do. Normally they may start out talking to you about the company. You don't ever want to be shocked about the company, right? Clearly, they're going to tell you some stuff that you don't know, but at minimum, you should know the company, where they're located, go to their website, you see who they were founded by, see who the CEO is. If you don't know anybody else, know who the CEO is, right? You know, do the research, try to look at that job description and you notice, oh, okay, they have this new project that's going to be in Tampa, and this is why they're doing, the job search. And you go to their website and you notice they just got this new contract in Tampa. Like, try to connect those dots. It will impress the interviewer if you're there and Mr. Smith is talking to you about the company, and our CEO Dan, Dan came from Canada and he started, this company off with just, him and his partner. And he was like, yeah, I was reading that. Yeah. And they made it grow. You can interject just a little bit to let them know, like, don't overdo it, right? Don't be, so obvious about it, but nod your head, act like you know what they're talking about. And then if they say, yeah, we're so excited, we just got this big project in Tampa. It's the first time we're going to be working with, the government. And this project that you're working with is going to be a new project. That's good for information for you to know, and you may even interject. Maybe you read somewhere that it said that, they're looking for the person to have some type of team lead experience. It was like, oh, okay, so this will be the team that will be led by this position. Yeah, yeah, yeah. One or two things just to let them know that you've done your research, but do your research on the company. You don't have to make it a full back and forth, but you want the person to feel like, and this is psychology 101, if they can see you in that company, if they can see you as part of the team, it makes a good impression. Because remember, think about it, if you're on a team, right? And you're trying to pick a team member, What type of team member do you want? You want someone that you feel comfortable with. You want someone that you can feel is a part of the team. And the quickest way to do that is to act like you know about the company. Let me tell y'all something. I have my entire life now, I've done a lot of things in my life, but my entire life, most jobs I've been able to get, and I will say I've been fortunate to, it's very few interviews I go on and I don't get the job. But one of the reasons that I feel that people tend to draw to me is my ability to connect. So I don't care if it's we went to the same school, we were in the military together, we grew up down south. I'm always looking for some type of commonality with a person, right? Why am I trying to do that? I'm trying to break the ice, because if the person can see you, right, not you being a stranger, not you as one of the 10 people they have to talk to that day. But if they can see you and they can feel that there's some type of commonality, if you can understand the type of work that they do, they can feel like, oh, thank goodness, I'm not going to have to train this person, for 12 hours. That gets you a few extra brownie points. Trust me, it has always worked for me. I do it. I don't do it, trying to, be fake about it. I do it naturally because I'm also trying to feel comfortable and to see, okay, is this the kind of person I want to be around? This type of place I want to be. So I'm also looking for commonalities to see, so I do it too for my own benefit, but that is just a hint. If people feel comfortable with you and they feel like you can make a good fit, and don't spend too much time trying to play football, guys. I'm be honest, some people mess up because they think, oh, okay, well, let me just, talk about something that I think they'll want to know. And you think that that is what makes a person comfortable. That does not make a person comfortable. Sometimes they can, it can read as too aggressive or too arrogant, or this you there they'll it'll read as you're just assuming you're going to get the job. Like, you don't want to come across that way. You want to come across as making them feel comfortable. Like, that's a trick. You want the interviewer to feel comfortable. You want to disarm them, not make them have their guard up. And that way you can kind of really see what's happening, because you want to make sure you're going to the right place. There's nothing more terrible than you choosing a position over another one, only to find out it was a horrible place, right? That so you're trying to, get as much information from that process as possible. Pay attention to what they're saying. Pay attention to, you know, what they're saying about their services, and if they have competitors. Some of them will talk about it aggressively, some of them won't. Either way, do your research so you'll know what's up. Also, and we'll dig into this tomorrow, one of the reasons why you want to have that notepad is because if there's any questions that you have, let's go back to, you read in the job description that they have this new project in Tampa. Maybe you don't live near Tampa, maybe you do, but you also saw that when you went onto their website that their training site is in Orlando. And so now you're like, okay, so am I going to have to go to Orlando for the training site and I live in Tampa? That may be a question you want to ask. So whatever questions that you may want to ask this person, maybe you have another question from the job description. That's what you want to have on your notepad, along with some other things that we're going to talk about tomorrow. So that's why it's important to have that notepad. But one thing you never, ever, ever want to do is let on that anything that you have a question about is an issue, right? And again, I keep saying we'll dig into this tomorrow, but because the bulk of this will be about the questions, we will talk about that tomorrow. But as they're talking, you want to listen for some of your questions to be answered. So if this person is saying, yeah, we got this new project, it's going to be in Tampa, you can interject, and that's what I'm going to talk more about tomorrow, but you can interject because you never want to let on. Maybe you have 3 things on your notepad that may be issues for you, but you don't want them to think anything is an issue for you, because you want to get through the entire interview. You want to go home and then you want to assess how you feel about that company. Number one, do you feel like it's worth a certain dollar amount? Number two, do you feel like, it's a place you want to work? Did they answer all your questions? You need to weigh all of that. The same way they're not going to let on to you whether they like you or not, because they're going to take their notes and then they're going to sit back and they're going to compare you to other people. So don't ever let on that anything is an issue. And the best way to do that is to interject your questions throughout the conversation without letting on anything is an issue. So you don't ever wait to the end of the interview when they say, "Do you have any questions for us?" And then you start spewing out questions. No, you lay out your questions as the topic arises. So in the beginning, when they're talking about, oh yeah, the training and I mean the new project, you say, "Oh, will that one be trained in Orlando?" I think I read that somewhere on your website. "Oh, no, we're not going to train in Orlando for that one. We'll be training in Tampa." Oh, okay. Maybe that was an issue for you, but you're not going to let that on. But you got that question out. You see how that goes? Now you can say, "Oh, thank goodness. I didn't want to travel to Orlando anyway." But that's how you ask those questions. So during the job interview, know that you are the focus for them, like I said, but they are also the focus for you. um, and it is a give and take. Yes, it's a let me see if this person is going to fit in with us. But also let me see if this person is going to lessen the load, because remember, you're a team member. So what they're looking for, are you going to be able to come in and lighten up the load that they have? You don't know, and this is a question you will also ask when it comes to any other questions you may have outside of the job description: how long that position has been vacant. Like, especially in the corporate field, that's a big issue, because you could be walking into the middle of an audit, inspection, a pile of work from a project, because they haven't filled the position in 2 months. So I always like to ask that type question. Oh, how long has the position been vacant? Or I won't say it that way because I don't want them to get offended. I'll say something like, "Oh, is this a new position? Or, was this position filled previously?" Because I want to know, what am I walking into? I also tend to ask, are there any, important, upcoming projects? Because again, you don't want to come to a job and next thing you know, you're working 80 hours a week, and because they didn't tell you that, they're 3 weeks behind on the project because they didn't have anybody. Like, you don't want any of those surprises, but we'll dig into that tomorrow. Just finishing up on the different types of interviews. If you are interviewing with more than one person, we call that a panel interview, right? Um, this panel interview um, could be one person, it could be three people. Uh, This is why you want to have your resumes. Now, some people like panel interviews, some people don't. I tend to like a panel interview because I like to get it out of the way, right? But this is something you can ask that screener. Remember, I was saying the different things you can ask the screener. Okay, will it just be Mr. Derek, Mr. Johnson? Or okay, you mentioned Sarah. Anyone else? I just want to know, because sometimes it could be a team member, sometimes it could be cross discipline. Let's say you're going to be on a construction site, so they may want you to meet with the project person, the person over HVAC, but it could be also the person in the welding department. It could also be, the general contractor. Like, you just want to know, like, who am I meeting? So you can prepare yourself mentally, but be prepared. You may have a panel interview, right? Now, obviously, when you are meeting in person, like I said before, know whether it's in a remote location or not. Make sure that screener is telling you. I may sound like the screener messes up sometimes. It's because the screener messes up sometimes. They do it so much that they can assume they've told you something, because they get very robotic. Some of them get very robotic, and they may have forgotten. They may just assume that you know. Or maybe the work itself, the job site is close to your house, but they want you to meet in their corporate office, and their corporate office is not close to your house. So that's why I say you want to just make sure you know where you're going. I shouldn't have to say this. We all know that if you arrive at an interview, to arrive early, right? We should know that, my friends. Listen, the moment you drive onto those people's lot, uh, you're at the interview, right? You're at the interview. You don't know who's to the left or right of you. The person that is going to interview you could be pulling into that parking lot at the same time as you are. So don't be in your car getting yourself ready on the phone fighting with your whatever because they forgot to take trash out. Like just don't people are watching. I cannot, count the number of times I've had coworkers peeking out windows and checking people out and walking through the lobby back and forth because they're really just trying to check out the new person, right? So be on guard from the moment that you drive on. Not that you're going to do anything crazy, but you just don't want the drama. Trust me when I tell you, you know how people are. So as soon as you drive on to that parking lot, you're on. You don't know who's related to who. You don't know the dynamics of these people. So be on guard at all times. Clearly make sure that you know that you arrive early, especially if it's somewhere that you don't know the traffic layout. When we're used to driving somewhere back and forth, we know the traffic patterns. You don't know the traffic patterns of where you're going. So make sure that you are early, my friends. Be nice to everyone. Act like everyone's the boss because you don't know those dynamics. Trust me when I tell you, you don't want to get into those situations where you've offended someone. You forgot to open the door, the front desk person is the CEO's daughter. Like, you don't want that drama, right? So just be on guard from the time you leave, get there until the time that you leave. There could be protocols, there could be safety protocols. Maybe you have to get a security badge, right? Y'all know how that goes, right? So that's another reason why you want to be early. You may have to park in this garage and then you may have to go through this security to get your little name badge. Like, for all those different reasons, make sure that you are early so you can do it. You might say, well, it's not my fault if I had to go through security. Everything is going to be your fault. Everything. If you're late and then here's your little competition and he 15 minutes early, right? People take note of that, right? So just make sure you don't put yourself behind. All right. So just going to talk lastly briefly about two different types of interviews, virtual interviews. One can be over the phone and one can be in video. Most of you guys won't have to deal with that, but hey, be mindful that just because you do have an in-person interview, it does not mean that this company, especially if they're a big company, may not want you to also interview with the top person or somebody that is remote, right? So there still could be an opportunity where you may have to meet with someone virtually. So just make sure that if it is like a telephone, obviously if it's a telephone, that's not that hard to prepare for, but make sure you're answering the phone. Like, you don't want the people to have to call you back. So if you say you're going to take a 11 o'clock phone call, make sure you're sitting by your phone at 11 o'clock. Like, you don't want the people to have to call you back. Like, you just don't want to have any of that drama. Make sure you're in a quiet place. They shouldn't be asking you, huh, what? I can't hear you, static. All these different kinds of things could affect your interview. One time I made the mistake of trying to do an interview in my car. I don't know what I was thinking. I think I was at a job and I was trying to run out and do an interview. Anybody ever did that before? It did not work. I did not realize how much loud noises and everything is going on around you when you're in your car. It was horrible. Um, if it is a video interview, it was a nightmare, man. I was like, I know I'm not getting this job, and I did not get that job. It probably was a huge distraction, and in week 3 we'll talk about distractions. You want to eliminate any type of distractions because you want to eliminate bias. People are people, right? So when it comes to a video interview, if you have to meet the top boss, via video, make sure that, your setting is professional, use those little fake backdrops if you can. Quiet place. One thing I'm going to say about both the phone and the video, my friends, if you have to do these types of videos, just you may have to be a little bit more animated than you normally are, because when you're not face to face, which is the most effective type of interview, if you have to do video or phone, these interviews detract from, it's not three-dimensional, right? It's what, two-dimensional at best. So it falls flat. So sometimes you have to lean into your video, smile more, nod more. I almost did not get a job because I had to do a video interview. I interviewed with the person and my supervisor, and she and I had a great interview. But then the CEO wanted to interview with me, and I'm not judging him because he's a Marine and I'm an Army person, but I only mention that because I know my people, right? I know my military people. So I met with this guy and he was super, super militant. Like he was giving me straight stone face. He was like sizing me up. I knew the game. You know, I'm like, dude, I've been doing this for a decade in the military. I know how it runs. But we were kind of sizing each other up, and I'm answering his questions, you know, and a lot of times anybody military, you know what I'm talking about, you know, we get straight to the point. We don't do a lot of, you know, shucking and jiving. And I could tell it wasn't going well because dude was kind of like trying to show me that, you know, and he was an ex-cop too, which was even funnier. So he was kind of trying to show me that his interrogation face. I'm like, is that what we're doing, really? And so he kind of went back to her and he was like, "You sure that's the one you want?" And she was like, "Yeah, I love her." Now, of course, he and I went on to be great buddies, but it was funny because I already knew what he was doing. I mean, it's not like he was like trying to be, you know, crazy, but it just came across that way, and we were both was, you know, kind of mugging each other out over the video, so it just did not go well, right? So you don't want that, you know. I don't care the type of energy that they're giving you, you know, because some people are just that way. You continue to be very, very friendly, smile, nod, lean in, you know, I don't love video interviews, you know, but if you have to have one, you know, that's just my 2 cents on that. All right. So here's your conference question for today. Here's what I want to know. I want to know, what is your most hated interview question in preparation for tomorrow? What is your most hated interview question and why is that? You know, I know many of us will probably say, why do you want to work for us? Or tell me about a time when we hate those, right? So that's what I want to know. What is your most hated interview question and why? My friends, please try to get this done by 12:30. I think I had someone asking me about yeah, 12:30 is 12:30 noon. 12:30, please get your question in. All right? All right, my friends. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Go ahead, Jameer.
I was wondering where I could find the midterm exactly.
Yeah, so just go to Thursday. If you go to Thursday and scroll down, it's if you like go on modules
Hmm.
and then go to week 2 Thursday, it's the last thing there. It says midterm. You see it?
But one second.
Hold on.
Um,
You don't
no,
see it?
it's locked.
It's locked. Let me see. Shouldn't be locked. Hold on. Modules, week 2, midterm. I need to change that from. Let me see. Oh, hold on. I'm in the wrong class. Hold on. One second. Let me stop